Tonight's lesson will be, would you take his place? I asked the question, would you be able to be put on the cross in his place? Think of it this way. Have you ever had a hammer hit your thumb and how that hurt? Now imagine that being over your whole body. Jesus took a serious beating for our behalf. Just to think about it a little more, let's take a look here, Jesus' trial map. Jesus was pretty much led all over the place before things were set in motion for him to die on the cross. You see, Jesus was taken from Gethsemane. Jesus first appeared before the Jewish council, which convened at daybreak at Caiaphas' house. From there, he went to Pilate, the Roman governor, then back to Herod, Tetrarch of Galilee, who was visiting in Jerusalem, and back to Pilate, who in desperation sentenced Jesus to die. And from that point, things were set in motion for him to die on the cross. The reading tonight will be from Luke 22:63 to 23:12. So starting in verse 63, now the men who were holding Jesus in custody were mocking him, beating him. They blindfolded him and were asking him, saying, prophesy, who is the one hitting you? And they were saying many other things against him at blasphemy. Going to verse 66, this is where the council of religious leaders condemned Jesus. When it was day, the council of the elders, the people assembled, both chief priests and scribes. They led him away to their council chamber, saying, if you are the Christ, tell us. But he said to them, if I tell you, you will not believe. And if I ask a question, you will not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the power of God. And they all said, are you the Son of God then? And he said to them, yes, I am. And then they said, what further do we need of testimony? For we have heard ourselves from his own mouth. You see, Jesus in effect agreed that he was the Son of God, when he simply turned the high priest question around by saying, who you say that I am? And Jesus identified himself with God by using a familiar title for God found in the Old Testament, I am, which is mentioned in Exodus 3:14. You see, the high priest recognized Jesus' claim and accused him of blasphemy. For any other humans, this claim would have been blasphemy, but in this case, it was true. Blasphemy, the sin of claiming to be God or of attacking God's authority and majesty in any way, was punishable by death. And the Jewish leaders had the evidence they wanted. So, moving into chapter 23, this is actually where Jesus stands trial before Pilate. And then the whole body of them got up and brought him before Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, we found this man misleading, and our nation forbidding to pay taxes to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king. So Pilate asked him, saying, are you the king of the Jews? And he answered, it is as you say. Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, I find no guilt in this man. But they kept on insisting, saying, he stirs up the people, teaching over Judea, starting from Galilee even as far as this place. When Pilate heard it, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who himself also in Jerusalem at that time. You see, Pilate was a Roman governor of Judea, where Jerusalem was located. He had a reputation for seeming to take special pleasure in harassing the Jews. For example, Pilate had taken money from the temple treasury and used it to build an aqueduct. And he insulted the Jewish religion by bringing imperial images into the city. As Pilate well knew, such acts could backfire. If the people were to lodge a formal complaint against his administration, Rome might remove him from his post. So Pilate was already beginning to feel insecure in his position when Jewish leaders brought Jesus to trial. Would he continue to badger the Jews and risk his political future? Or would he give in to their demands and condemn a man who he was quite sure was innocent? That was the question facing Pilate that springtime Friday morning, nearly 2,000 years ago. Now, what we see is Jesus go stand trial before Herod. So now Herod was very glad when he saw Jesus, for he wanted to see him for a long time because he had been hearing about him, and he was hoping to see some sign performed by him. And he questioned him at some length, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and scribes were standing there accusing him vehemently. And Herod, with his soldiers, after treating him with contempt and mocking him, dressed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him back to Pilate. Now Herod and Pilate became friends with one another that day, for before they had been enemies with each other. Herod, also called Herod the Antipas, was in Jerusalem that weekend for Passover celebration. This was the Herod who had killed John the Baptist, by the way. Pilate hoped to pass Jesus off on Herod because he knew that Jesus had lived and worked in Galilee. But Herod was not much help. He was curious about Jesus and enjoyed making fun of him. But when Herod sent Jesus back to Pilate, it was the verdict of not guilty. Herod was part Jewish ruler of Galilee and Perea. Pilate was the Roman governor of Judea and Samaria. Those four provinces together with several others had been united under Herod the Great. But when Herod died in 4 BC, the kingdom was divided among his sons, each of whom called Teriot, meaning ruler of the fourth part of the region. Archelaus, the son who had received Judea and Samaria, was removed from office within 10 years, and his provinces were then ruled by a succession of Roman governors, of whom Pilate was the fifth. Herod the Antipas had 2 advantages over Pilate, though. He came from a hereditary part Jewish monarchy, and he had held his position much longer. But Pilate had 2 advantages over Herod. He was a Roman citizen and the envoy of the emperor, and his position was created to replace that of Herod's ineffective half-brother. It is not surprising that the 2 men were uneasy around each other. Jesus' trial, however, brought them together, because Pilate recognized Herod's authority over Galilee. So Herod stopped feeling threatened by the Roman politician, and because neither man knew what to do in this predicament, their common problem united them. As we see moving forward, Pilate, he wanted to release Jesus when he came back, but the crowd loudly demanded his death, so Pilate sentenced Jesus to die. No doubt, though, that Pilate did not want to risk losing his position, which may already have been shaky, by allowing a riot to occur in his province. And as a career politician, he knew that the importance of compromise, and he saw Jesus more as a political threat than as a human being with rights and dignity. He sentenced Jesus to die. So guys, as we think about this, we come back to the question, would you take his place? Jesus knew when he got arrested in the garden that he was going to die. And he had to go through all this just to get to the cross. So he took a brutal beating. He hit the cross. Our sins hammered those nails into his feet and into his hands. Would you be willing to take his place? Think about this, guys. This is the foundation of our faith. We had a God that sent his only begotten Son to die for us on the cross just so we could be saved and spend eternity with him. There is no greater love. But just think about that as we go into this Easter season. That's how much he loved us. It's incomprehensible. I can't even think unconditional that love is. And that's how powerful our God is. This is going to supplement the Zoom lesson that we're going to have Wednesday night. I would love to see you, and God bless, guys. For more information on Aztec Church of the Nazarene, please visit our Facebook page and email us. God bless.